Welcome to the Art Lady channel. I want to share with you today a very unusual type of portraiture, and it's done by an artist named Giuseppe Arcimboldo. He's from Italy, and as you can see in this portrait here, you can see it's created in an unusual way. Giuseppe Arcimboldo lived right after the time Leonardo died. He was born in 1526, and Leonardo had died in 1519. And so the style of art during that Renaissance period of art was slightly changing. During the time Giuseppe lived, it was during the age of exploration. And the kings and queens and emperors were sending over ships to new countries and exploring new lands. If you think about it, in 1492, when Columbus sailed his 3 ships, they were looking for new land. And see, that was not too far off from 1526 when Giuseppe was born. So they were exploring and continuing to explore new lands and finding new things. Giuseppe was interested in all the new things that were found, fruits and vegetables and plants from the new worlds, and he would paint them, do sketches of them and study them, kind of like a scientist would study them. And he would draw little tiny pictures. And then he had this unusual idea of taking all of these wonderful treasures that were found in the new countries, and he combined a lot of that, fruits and vegetables and plants, the new discoveries, into his portraiture and created different themes for the portraiture. This one here is the theme called Spring. And what's unusual about this is it's not just randomly placed. It's placed specifically so that the items still give the characteristics of the man or woman he's trying to recreate. So it still captures a likeness. But when you look closely at the likeness, you can see it's made up of your fruits and vegetables and different plants that were found in the New World, or plants and fruits and vegetables that were rare in their area, and signifying wealth, because to eat all of this wonderful bounty of food, you had to be quite wealthy to afford all of this. You weren't of that peasant status. You were very wealthy. And these are kind of like modern day caricatures, or the beginnings of surrealism in his artwork. And this is what we're going to be making today. We're going to be using these little studies or little plants, whatever theme you want to make. It could be even all of sailboats if you find sailboat pictures. And we're going to be gluing them into a portrait. And if you look here, this is one that I did, and I used a silhouette or a profile, you could call it, portrait drawing first. And then I filled it with little things I cut out of magazines. Now, Giuseppe would paint this. This was all studies that he had done, and then he composed them into an interesting composition and then painted them. They weren't cut and glued like we're going to be doing, but we're going to take a collage method and trying to recreate his images here in our own way using cut paper and collage. The first thing that you want to start off with is a profile sketch like this. And you can just do a simple, it doesn't have to be very detailed because we're mainly looking for just the outline. And here's another profile right here of just the outline. Like a lot of this inside stuff is just guidelines. And then what we'll do is we will take pieces of magazines that we've cut out, and you're going to decide what colors you want where. So here I had an idea already before I started cutting my newspapers. I decided I wanted the face in the pink tones, the hair in the yellow tones, and then her clothing in the purple values here. And then the background is going to be all the same value, and I chose green. That way we get separation of color, so it's not all confusing. This is a student example that they were working on, and they just chose to cut squares and rectangles and different shapes out of from magazines and just apply them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fruit, a vegetable, a plant. You can choose how you want to do it, but it's a collaging technique. The first step is to get your colors, and I work one color at a time. So what I would do is I would cut my magazine out, and I would start with the face, then move to the hair, and then the clothing, and then the background. Because if you end up running out of time in class, then your background is last. You can always just paint that a color. So I take my clippings, and I chose pink again here, and I just cut out anything I can find that's pink. And I want to be able to fill this space here with my pink, so make sure you have enough of this to fill your area at a time. And I work up my gluing one section at a time. So I have my pink ready to go, and then what I do is I take my glue and I apply it. Now you can either choose to go over your eye or around it, that's up to you. I apply my glue into my face area, and I do not put much glue. If you look here, there's just very little bits of glue. And then I just rub it all in, and I don't have to cover every area. I just kind of get the majority of it in there, and it's very thin. And then I work up my pieces where they're going to fit. Like this follows the jawline right in here. And if you have an area that overlaps your line, and it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. I'm just clipping it right there. And then I'm going to work up my next area, and I kind of try and use the most I can out of this. This can fill in here, and I clip it so that it's similar, and I try and use every bit of this. This will work up in the nose. Actually, I'll bring it up here. And you're filling in your pieces. You can overlap slightly. Now that works up this nice lip area here. And then I'm going to stick this in here. And then the little bits I just cut, if I have little randoms left over, to fill in. Now you can even do, you know, your lips in a darker color where it overlaps if you don't like something like this. And I'll stick this darker value here. And I'm just trying to cover all of the white spaces. Sometimes if you have a really small crack, you can just leave it and hit it with a little bit of paint or marker after all this dries, if it's real small and bothering you. Okay, so there, I've got my face area, and I would probably just continue working up the neck because it's part of the flesh with this same color, but I'm just going to skip that part right now just to show so that you can see in the demonstration. The next color I've chosen is orange, so I continue working up, and I just found this really big piece here with some cool texture. I also found some of this that I thought would look cool for the hair. You know, this kind of lines. I really like the line part here. I used big, this was a giant sunflower, and kind of lay it out. It kind of helps if you lay it out first to see the flow of it. And then all of this will then be glued on. And that's how you're going to continue working up your piece. And when you like the design of it, then you can glue it down. Once everything is glued down, and again, you want to finish everything first and then do your background. For the background, this is what I've chosen here is just some of these trees, and I can just cut this up randomly. So I would place it here, then I would cut around this and just place this all on randomly, and then if I ran out, so I found a big piece of color, and this photograph has a lot of great color in it that's of similar value. And I would place that all around and glue that down. And let me show you this one that's done. And I'll show you the last step of after you have it all glued. Here's the one that's finished. So after I have it all glued down, what I then would do, I'll glue this section here and show you on this. I'll just do a piece of this. I'm just going to slide it underneath here as best I can to glue it down. And cut this off. I want to show you how I'm antiquing it. Let me glue this. Put a little glue. So you work up each color at a time, one color section at a time, and then you would have it completely done before you start your paint part of this. So this would then be completely done. I'll put some more over here. And then I'll show you how I kind of antiqued this background. What I wanted to do was to create a darker value background like Giuseppe has around the profile and around the sides, and then it kind of blends in to this lighter values, and you can actually see some more of the detail of the plants around it. But I wanted my silhouette and profile to stick out. So what we do once we have it completely done is we add black paint to our profile to neaten up our edges, and then we blend it out to the edge, and we lighten up our edge. So I want to show you that technique. So we're going to take our black paint, and I'm going to just paint in the profile area, and I'm using a tempera paint. And again, remember, this whole thing would be finished. And then I paint right over it, and I've used magazines that are slightly glossy. Most of our magazines, when you get them, you're going to have a little gloss to it. And then that way it'll wash off. So if you paint the whole thing black, then you can take your paper towel, and I dampened the paper towel. I put a little bit of water on it, and you can pull off your edges, your lighter colors on your edges. Right in here to show. So keep it dark near the profile, and then you're just going to kind of pull some of your color near the edge and blend it in so that it shows a darker area going to the lighter area in there. Just like that. And it helps with the profile, helps define that profile. You can see up close in this one. And here what I did was I cut out the darker values for the lips, little flower petals, because my theme was the flowers. And then the hair was butterflies, and oranges, the theme here. And you can see how the darker areas are around my edges, and then I pulled off some of the paint on this area, made it a little bit lighter to show some detail. And I even had a little bit of some flowers in the background here. And that is how you can reproduce a style similar to Giuseppe Arcimboldo's nature studies and paintings. And I hope you enjoy creating your own unusual portrait